It was a huge game at the weekend. Arsenal thumping, if you can thump, 2-0. Chelsea at the Emirates Stadium at the weekend. And afterwards, Maurizio Sarri came out with some comments that he wanted to make very, very clear to the Chelsea dressing room. But in doing so, he was saying that the players were motivated and that he couldn't motivate them. So in doing that, is he going to lose the players and maybe the fans as well? It's a huge, huge gamble for him to make. And is it one that's going to work out for a manager who was lauded as he came in initially at the start of the season, but is now starting to have a few problems? Maybe the transfer window will help in all of that. To go through all of this and the tactical side of Chelsea after that game and the lack of goals that they're scoring at the moment is Kristan Heneage. How are you, mate?
I'm very good, mate. How are you?
Very good for hearing those dulcet tones. So Kristan from the Heneage clan is here with you. If you're looking at me and thinking, what's up with his eye? Yeah, I've still got a gammy eye, okay? So I'm just going to say it to you guys now before we get into this, okay? Because I saw some of the comments last... Forget it. Let's talk about football anyway. Kristan, so these comments, let's read out a couple of them. So Sarri claimed his players are extremely difficult to motivate. And he said, because I want to send a message to my players and I want my message to be very clear, he got a translator involved. And he said, I have to say I'm extremely angry, very angry indeed. And this defeat was due to our mentality more than anything else. This is something I can't accept. This group of players are extremely difficult to motivate. So those, I'm guessing, those kind of comments are to motivate the players, ironically. What did you think when you saw these comments and you saw that interview?
I thought it was quite a wide-ranging interview. I mean, he also said, I'm very aware of the fact this is never going to be a team well known for its battling and fighting qualities. I think if you look at some of the players in that team, Kante being the most possible prime example, that's a player that is known for that. So I think that had a sort of deeper meaning to it, almost that a lot of the bigger characters that maybe would cause problems after a situation like this, a Diego Costa, for example, aren't at the club anymore. It's a lot more of a level-headed dressing room. And I think even if you read some of the reports that came out in the wake of this, the players like working under Sarri. They like training under him. I think what I find interesting is the parallels here with his two predecessors, which is it felt a little bit Mourinho at times, I won't lie, in some of its needle and its punch to the gut. But there was also just this little bit of Conte in there, the fact that this was, again, a really big, sort of heavy-handed talk in the wake of an Arsenal game when we're kind of discussing the fact that tactics aren't working for this manager, this Italian manager, if you want to, weave a few more parallels there. And I think this could be a pivotal game for him and his tenure at Chelsea.
Because, I think that's a really good point. When you look at Mourinho and Conte, he has got a little aspect of both. I think we thought he was more along that sort of Conte line of, that Italian manager who loves his players and generally kind of protects them. But Conte, I think there were moments where he moaned, and you've seen that in this January transfer window with Sarri. He was doing it about the Cesc Fabregas deal. It looks like that's not a player that he wanted to lose. But then these kind of comments, I think is there an element of a sort of a culture clash that I wouldn't understand, not watching Serie A or knowing how these Italian managers work? But because I think everything I've seen when they look at these comments, they go, look, the number one rule, and these are people in the media, these are journalists talking about these comments, the number one rule is you don't hammer your players like that. So do you think there might be an element of him not really realising what kind of damage he might have done within the English media? And these are kind of comments that you could get away with if in Italy a little bit more?
Well, it's interesting you talk about not hammering the players. I think back to All or Nothing with Guardiola in the changing room telling his own players, look, I'll defend you to the hilt in the press conference, but I'll tell you the truth in here. I can see why that rationale works, but then if you feel as if you're not getting through to them and you almost do need a little bit of a public execution of some of the past behaviour, then I can justify that personally. I think it's never going to be taken well. I think the fact that, again, we're hearing from inside the camp through people like The Independent and Miguel Delaney that the players do enjoy working under Sarri. They feel as if he's an educator. That it probably justifies it to a certain degree. And I think that for me is perhaps the most important thing to remember is that, coaching styles, tactics, it's never a fluid journey. It's one that does have its peaks and troughs. And I think Paco Esteran, the former assistant for Rafa Benitez, did a really good piece in The Independent talking about that there are three stages essentially. There's an initial sort of boost and everything goes great, which I think is kind of what we saw under Sarri to begin with. Then it plateaus and maybe it wobbles a bit, but then you gain this fluency in the third stage and things start to hopefully become a bit better. And I think for someone as detail oriented as him, who again is so focused on possession, we're going to see that. I think we certainly saw that with Guardiola at first, that kind of rise, fall, and then rise again.
Yeah, very, very true. And I think what's interesting, and there's such hypocrisy often with pundits and people talking about how you get out of a difficult moment. Do you stick with your principles? Do you stick with a way of playing, which we all know? Look, it's got its own name. It's called Sarri ball for a reason. It's how he likes to set up teams. Then sometimes people say, look, if it's not working, you've got to change it. It seems like Sarri's the kind of guy who he's not going to change, and I think that's where a lot of the scrutiny is coming at the moment. Because in that Arsenal-Chelsea game, the big talking point, there were two big talking points for me. One was not playing Giroud, which I personally couldn't really understand because I thought it made it so easy for Arsenal, who did press very well, but it was a home game where they would have seen that lineup and seen that Giroud wasn't playing, and would have known quite quickly that, especially in a possession-based team like Chelsea, if you don't have that target man and you're going to play possession football, you're going to end up being quite wide, but not having much depth to you because you haven't got that focal point. And that led to, I felt, Arsenal being able to press without much fear. The Arsenal backline's been struggling when they have to go backwards, but they didn't have to worry about that at all in this game, in my opinion. So one for me was Giroud not playing. The second one is the Kante-Jorginho sort of conundrum that hipsters or people this is, again, people in the media keep going on about the hipsters love Jorginho, but the old school people think they see someone like Kante and see what he's done for Leicester and for Chelsea, and they look at it and go, this doesn't make sense. Do you think Sarri should change what he's doing there? And if he is, where is it going wrong? Is it one or the other, or is it both of them?
I think you have to look at this as small changes and big changes. So the big changes would be potentially abandoning his philosophy, that Sarri ball that you alluded to there. The smaller changes are in the games like the Arsenal game, for example, putting Giroud on earlier to just cause a bit of havoc, not really adapting the philosophy, so to speak, just putting someone on that, as you say, can be that focal point, is someone that Eden Hazard has said he likes to bounce the ball off, he likes to play with, and just accepting that, okay, in this game, we're not performing right now, so I need to adapt something and I need to put one of my best players in Hazard in a position and a platform to succeed. And I do that by bringing someone like Olivier Giroud on. I think you can talk about the longer term issues of, okay, well, N'Golo Kante has been arguably the best defensive midfielder alongside Fernandinho in this league for the last few seasons. Mm-hmm. He's not as suited to this sort of box-to-box Allen-like role that I want him to play. So do we ship him out and get a player who's more like that? Or do I adapt my philosophy? I think if I was to guess, based on what I've seen of Sarri, it's more likely to be ship him out and get someone in. But then you also have to throw in the fact that Chelsea have a really talented youth system that's winning the Youth Cup pretty much year on year and has won a lot of the most recent ones. And they're now in a position where they have someone like Hudson-Odoi who's not getting into the team and said, okay, I'm going to go. And they're trying to desperately sort of convince him and sway him around and keep a really promising English talent who possibly could have been included into that side a little bit earlier. So there's a lot of free thinking at Chelsea. It's not joined up right this second, which is making it quite difficult to interpret.
I agree. The bit I'm confused about is Kante signed a new deal this year. Sarri at the same time said he's not that central midfielder that can do the job that Jorginho does, and I can't see how these two can work together, because even side by side, I think when it comes to management, often it's about a system, but it's about getting players in positions where they want to be and where they can thrive. Those two players in Hazard and Kante, for me, Hazard is best on the left, and even more important than that, in those pockets of space where he has runners going beyond him, which creates space for him to then be able to turn and then run and confuse players and do the great stuff that he does. He's not being able to do that. And then when it comes to Kante, Kante is a box-to-box midfielder, but for me, it's his starting position both with and without the ball that I don't understand what Sarri's trying to get at. And long term, even if you get, because that person who's playing in the Kante position, he's crucial. Like, he's a really big part of it, because for Jorginho, he gets the ball, and if he is able to turn and play it forwards, he wants to play it to Hazard quickly if he can. But if he can't, that next pass is often Kante. And that's where it falls down for me, because I don't think Kante ever wants the ball sort of from behind him, where he's got to have such awareness of totally what's around him. I don't think he's that kind of guy. So he ends up with the ball when they're dominating possession, kind of out to the side, not really getting involved. And when they lose the ball, he's not there to do his screening and almost have that freedom defensively to go and win the ball. I can't see these two ever working at any point in the system that Sarri wants to play. Do you agree? Do you disagree with that? What do you think?
I agree. I think in the system he wants to play, no. And that's part of the problem. It's that Jorginho is a wonderful passer of the ball. I'm not personally a huge subscriber to the idea that no assists equals no good play. Yeah, I think he has created chances that players should have finished, could have finished. One of the frailties of Jorginho, though, is he looks very slow when he's running back to his own goal. And I think that's where someone like a Kante sweeps up and cleans things up.
Yeah.
But if he's being asked to contribute in both boxes, yes, that will bring positives like the goal against Manchester City, for example. But it also means he's not going to be sort of on your halfway line when a team is breaking off you and you need midfielders to track runners. I think that's a big problem that they need to try and correct, and almost a balance they need to restore. And I'm not sure if he's willing to adapt his philosophy that much, because it did, you can hear the Juventus fans saying otherwise, but it did bring a degree of success in Italy with Napoli. So why would he want to change that? And equally, from a Chelsea perspective, you brought him in knowing this is what he does. So if you're going to expect him to bend the players to his will at every turn, I think at least in modern football, that's a heck of an ask to try and do. And yes, you can indulge him with a Higuain, but that's a 31-year-old that's going to be on a lot of money and does kind of go against the policy of investing in older players, having just shipped out Fabregas for a similar reason. It goes back to what I said. I don't see necessarily a fluency of thought from top to bottom with Chelsea right now. I see very individual camps sorting things out, with the youth team thriving, but the first team sort of sitting in the middle trying to do something.
Yeah, no, I agree. But we're going to get to Higuain in just a second. But one question I did want to put you: if Sarri's got if we don't think Kante and Jorginho is going to work, who goes? Because he's brought in Jorginho, but Kante signed a new deal this year. Which one would you think Sarri would choose to keep out of those two?
That is Sophie or Sarri's choice. Come
on.
It's really difficult, because I think when you've invested so much in Jorginho, to admit that's a huge failure. Look, I don't think he'll be short of suitors. You could, I think, quite comfortably sell him back to Italy tomorrow if you needed to. You're obviously never going to sell him to Manchester City, who were also reportedly linked with him at the time. I do really like what Kante represents, and I just think when I look at it, and again, this is very much in the moment thinking, I think it's harder to replace a Kante. I can't think of 2 or 3 players that are in that mould, let's say. Yeah. Whereas I think you could find a player that gives you a similar set of skills to Jorginho, if not maybe at that perfect sweet spot that we saw him do so regularly for Napoli.
Do you know what I think, for what it's worth as well? I think there are a lot of similarities with Guardiola. And one thing that Guardiola did was he understood that the Premier League is not like Serie A, and that you do need to tweak the way that you set up your team or the players that you bring in. And he did that. He dealt with. They've found a way to be much better with against the long ball, whereas in the first season they really struggled with that. I think that's the big question for Sarri: is can he tweak? Is he too long in the tooth to go, okay, in this league I need to move it around a little bit for my kind of football to work. Let's talk about Higuain.
I think one thing I would say is that I think you're right to mention Guardiola, because there's an element of idealist in both of them, in that they've got very clearly defined style. What I always say about Guardiola is his style is incredibly robust, and the best example I can give is goal kicks. Because if you press goal kicks really high with City, they ping it long to Aguero or Jesus to run into the space behind. If you stand off them, they play it short and they build from the back. If you kind of go, neither up nor down and halfway, they'll try and ping it into the middle and do that. So that for me, it highlights the robustness that City's style has. It's not perfect, no style is perfect. But there's a robustness there that I think Sarri almost needs to develop. He needs to go back to the drawing board and say, okay, what's not working here and how do I sort of hide that deficiency or mask that deficiency?
Or create options, isn't it? It's create options. Because I think that's the other thing for me as well. I think Willian and Pedro can be very similar at times, and I think that whole team lacks a bit of pace. And if they had a bit more pace, then that might offer up a few more solutions for Jorginho at the moment. I think Everton did it first. They spotted that it was all about Jorginho and stopping him, and they did that and got a 0-0 draw against Chelsea. And so Chelsea, they're not destroying the teams lower down the league, and they're getting pumped by Spurs and by Arsenal in those games as well. So they need to sort something out. Is Higuain, is he going to be the answer to that? Because a lot of people turning up their nose at this loan signing. So Milan, he's at AC Milan at the moment. He's on loan from Juventus. Chelsea, it looked like that one was kind of done and dusted. I think Milan are trying to sort out their replacement, which is a Genoa striker, Krzysztof Piatek, which would enable Higuain to go to Chelsea. If he does come in, is he the answer to not all of their problems? Because we've been talking about the two midfielders for quite a lot of this video, but is he going to answer a good few of them?
Yes, I think he solves some problems because by all accounts, Alvaro Morata is as good as gone. He's heading to Atletico Madrid on loan with an option to buy. And the problem for Morata is one that unfortunately has kind of popped itself up a few times during his career, that he's not reliable in terms of finishing chances when he's given that, lead billing, if you will. And that's been the case this season at least. And I think Higuain will give you more consistency to that end, absolutely. I think he'll work well with a Hazard or Willian and Pedro and will serve as that focal point. He's different to Giroud, obviously, in a lot of ways. But I think, yes, he will solve some immediate problems at a fairly hefty cost. And I think, at 31, I think he is now, there's not a long-term element to his arrival. It's definitely for the here and now, which you imagine is top four or Champions League via the Europa League, whichever way Sarri decides to try and engineer it. I think that's very much what he's been brought in for.
Yeah, I've got to say, some people are saying that they don't think it will work and that he'll struggle with the pace of the Premier League. I think for this Chelsea team, I think he's a great fit because they do dominate possession. I think they're double the amount of passes Arsenal did the other night. And when you've got that, you need someone who can take their chances quickly, can maybe have that little bit of composure in the penalty box as well and have great movement in the penalty box because it's going to be crowded because you're going to have a load of defenders there. And that, for me, is Higuain's probably greatest skill, is his mind in the box, his ability to find space and to maybe hold back his runs a little bit. And also, he's had to deal with a lot of pressure, big moves. He's never been bothered about upsetting anyone with any of those moves as well. And when the pressure's been on, he's scored goals. This season hasn't gone too well for him, but I think he'll get the opportunities at Chelsea, and I think he'll be able to deal with the pressure of it. And I think he'd be a cracking signing for them. I think Hazard would do very, very well with them. Final question then, and let us know in the comments below who you think will get that final fourth spot. Because, although Spurs, of course, having the injuries they've had, they could drop off as well. You never know. It looks like those top two are going to be the top two. But who's going to get fourth place, Kristan? Do you think if they get Higuain, do you think that'll be enough to get them top four this season?
Man United are in a very good run of form. I'm going to say no. I think teams will start to frustrate them more and more. I still have a lot of misgivings about Arsenal. I think they're in a similar state of flux where it's 1 minute it's great against Chelsea, the next minute it's a loss to West Ham, and they look quite meek. It's a bit of a toss-up. I don't say it with any confidence. There's no mortgage payments going on either one of these teams, to be honest. I
think this one's going to go. It's going to go all the way in terms of that final, that fourth position. Let us know what you think, guys. Higuain, would that be a good move? Kante or Jorginho? If you can only get rid of one, and you have to get rid of one, which one would you keep at Chelsea? Let me know in the comments below. If you want to hear more or read more from Kristan, where can they find you, mate?
on Twitter at KHENEAGE.
There you go. If you are new to the channel and you've enjoyed this video, then why not hit the like button and the subscribe button so you can subscribe to Ball Street. We'll see you very soon. Goodbye.